Why your vision matters way more than motivation. This week I stared at a blank screen for the first time in a long time. I had nothing. No spark, no drive, just a weight of my body saying, I can't do this anymore. It's a strange kind of feeling when you have defeat in showing up for something that you love. It makes you question everything, from consistency to energy to the effort you've been putting in for months. But here's the thing, I showed up anyway. And that's what I want to talk about today, because the moment that motivation dies out, that's when you're left with the quiet pulse of vision. And this is what refuses to die. The lie of motivation that we've been told is that you've been sold this idea that motivation is the holy grail of productivity. But if you don't feel driven, that you shouldn't be doing the thing. But what if pushing through that tiredness means that you're actually aligned, that you're showing up even when you don't want to? What if the absence of motivation is actually the proof that you're on the right track? Because the moment that everything feels heavy, your body begs to do something else, and you still show up. That's what we tend to think motivation is, but motivation is the fire that burns out. Vision is like seeing a candlelight in the distance. It's that soft light that continues longer, but we are able to light the way of the path, one light by another light, by candle. We move towards that vision because in doing so, we often pass that flame on to others. That each step forward becomes this light that we pass on, lighting up someone else's world and helping us move through the darkness. And when we have a vision, it gets brighter, not just for us, but for all. So vision doesn't have to be clear. It has to be compelling. There's a misconception that vision needs to be perfect, this 5-year plan mapped out in Notion, color-coded, but your plan doesn't need to be that concrete. It just needs to be strong enough to get you back to the desk, back to the screen, back to the gym, back to the business, whatever it is that you need to do. And I realize that when your body remembers this, it's your vision being pulled towards that direction. When everything else fades, especially if you're building something meaningful, that if you're in a transition, a reinvention, a new chapter of your life, don't expect motivation to get you there alone, because it won't. Vision will. Vision is not about sight. We confuse our vision as something we can tangibly see as a picture. It's this mapped out plan, some visual outcome, something tied to a future date. But a vision is a sense. While vision suggests that it's sight, it extends far beyond this. It's about engaging all of our senses to create a compelling picture of the future that we desire, a felt experience. It's not about what you see with your eyes, but in what we feel in our nervous system, a pull, a resonance, a quiet, intentional nod that says, yes, I want that life. I want that experience. I want to live in that. Not just something we want to achieve. Sometimes when we get there to the goal, the image of the life that we thought that we wanted, it doesn't quite feel the way that we thought it would. But until you move towards it, we can't land anywhere near it. Shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land amongst the stars comes to mind. Without proximity, there's no clarity. You have to walk the path to realize what actually fits. Only then can you adjust. Only then can you feel that if somewhere close enough that feels like you. But here's the catch. When you start walking towards your vision, others will notice. Some will cheer you on, others will redirect you. Not always because it's malicious, but because they don't understand your path. It doesn't make sense to them. And sometimes people will pull you off track with an idea, a story, or something shiny that seems like a quicker, more easier outcome. That's why you have to protect your vision. Guard the flame. The flame of being pulled away from your vision can be as easy as someone with a compelling story selling it to you as an idea. Not in the monetary sense, but because they know how to frame it in a way that creates the feeling and imagery of an easier, more desirable outcome. They paint a future that sounds smoother, more certain, more familiar. But the real question is, does it actually feel like yours? To determine if this is an experience you truly want, check the environment. Chances are they're selling it to you because it's more advantageous to them, not necessarily because it's most aligned with you. We've been sold the idea that vision is a mapped out plan, a belief that by this date I will have this result. But a true vision isn't transactional. It's not a business plan with a guaranteed outcome. It's a living sense of something you are tuning into again and again and again until it becomes embodied. But that embodiment doesn't happen by accident. Vision is asked to be lived, not just imagined. And the only way that you can live it is by giving it space to, in time. What we think arrives by chance is often the result of structure. Vision starts as a feeling, but it becomes real through repeated action. The calendar is what the vision lives within. It's how it begins to take form. I used to keep a calendar just for work, but now it's the container for my whole life. How I actually track what I've practiced that week. And it's not just what I'm obligated to do. If I want to grow in marketing, I ask how much time have I spent on marketing this week? If I don't have an answer, I look at my calendar. It's not about control, it's about clarity. It allows me to become more intentional with the time that I have, because your vision is what truly matters. It should be visible somewhere in your day. Vision without execution is just a hallucination. Thomas Edison. There's a metaphor that I keep coming back to, and it is the lighthouse and the fog. Your vision is the lighthouse, your motivation is the weather. Sometimes it's sunny and clear, other times it's foggy and stormy, but you never steer your ship by the weather. You steer it by the light. It doesn't mean the lighthouse disappeared. It just means you have to slow down, refocus, and keep moving. This is what this week was for me. It was foggy. It was all types of seasons. But I know full well that the lighthouse is there, that eventually I'll find my way. And when you can start to see things like this, they don't have the weight that they usually do, because you're able to see that this particular season of life will come to pass. This is what happens when you're adjusting to a new direction. It pulls in old patterns. It challenges your ability to keep focus, and habits that you've outgrown will begin to come back. But it's not a sign to revert back to these patterns. It's just something that you're used to, and this is where most people stop, because they are not because they're incapable, but because they mistake recalibration for misalignment. Your mind is learning to be focused in new ways. Your body is learning how to move through what it once resisted. Not because it feels easy, but because it's starting to feel real. The same voice that criticizes you is the one that also wants you to win. Here's what I've been noticing. The same inner voice that disguises the doubt, the fear, the one that's trying to keep you safe. It's afraid of failure. But if you sit with it long enough, underneath it, you see that that's where your vision lives. It's what stayed with me the whole time, through illness, burnout, chronic fatigue, everything that made me question whether I would ever live a normal life again. But what I noticed is what rose from that is clarity. And now when I don't feel like showing up, I do, because I know what happens if I don't. I've seen that version of my life and I don't want to go back to it. Mastery is measured by action. You don't become great by dreaming about something or planning it or visioning it on a vision board. You get great at it by doing the thing, tracking it. And this is why I use my calendar like a mirror, not just to control time, but to see what I'm actually prioritizing. If I want to master something, whether it's business writing, speaking, marketing, you need to ask yourself, did I really practice that this week? If not, where did your time go? The answer will show what you value. Not in theory, but in reality. A simple way to recalibrate is to master any skill you want to acquire is by starting to use your calendar, not just as a planner, but as a tracker of mastery. Ask yourself, what am I practicing this week? Where did my time go? Because you'll need to see whether it actually aligns with your life. What are you trying to build? Your calendar will not lie to you. That's why I use it every time. If you didn't fill it out this week, there's your answer. You get to see that your time was actually governed by uncertainty. Vision is something your body remembers. If you take nothing else away from this, remember that vision isn't motivation, it's a memory. It's what your body remembers even when that spark begins to fade. Because when you're tired, when you're frustrated, it's the things that will keep showing up over and over again when it's not working. But you have to keep looking from where the light is coming from, because the fog always does lift. And when it does, you'll be so glad that you stayed the course.